Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm Sheldon and this is Behind the Enthusiast. Today we are back at the Honda again, trying to put these bars on there. Obviously in the last video I was kind of telling you guys how to kind of figure out what you might need for handlebars on your flat tracker. This first set is going to be a little bit of an experiment for me. So today, in order to complete that and confirm if everything is actually going to work, we have to switch over the controls. So I'm going to be putting on the riser, the new riser. I'm going to be basically putting the new bar on the bike. I might be tightening a few things up just, to make sure everything is aligned. And then we're going to start transferring all of the controls. And well, I'm really hoping that I don't need longer cables. I do have some on order just in case, but if it doesn't work, then I will have to wait for those to come in, and fingers crossed that those show up in time, but we won't know until we dive into this thing and start taking it apart, so let's get into it. So the first thing that I need to do, these bushings, I've actually cleaned all of these up, so they look really, really nice, by the way. So they're all cleaned up, and I have to put these on the underside. However, I have to make sure that the new risers thread in properly. Now, if they're a little bit short, I am going to be using Loctite on them anyway. And as long as the threads are actually covered a decent amount, generally, I believe the rule of thumb is 3/4 of the threads. If anything less than that is through, it can be very, very dangerous. So if you guys have any doubts when you're buying universal components, such as risers, make sure that you do your research, because sometimes they don't actually work very well. Sometimes the bolts might be too short. Maybe they're too long. However, in this case, I would rather longer than shorter. And keep in mind, the reason I'm having to thread these in, just like the original ones, is because it is a little bit of a tight squeeze. However, these bolts are just a hair bigger, so I'm struggling just a little bit more in putting these back on than I would compared to the OEM ones. As you guys can see right in there, not a whole lot of thread showing, and I still have to put that nut, nylock actually, with a washer on there. The nut by itself probably wouldn't be too bad. Now there is a bit of space there, a lot of slack that needs to be squished through. So one of the things you guys can do, put this on, tighten it up, and then check the thread depth in here. And what I mean by that is the end of the bolt. Make sure the end of the bolt is as close to the end of that nylock as possible, where that plastic is right at the end there. Make sure the end of the bolt is as close as that can possibly be, and use Loctite on it. If it's nowhere near it, let's say it's only, I don't know, 1 full turn on or 2 full turns on, that is definitely not good enough, and you guys definitely need to get longer bolts. So this is an issue that you run into sometimes with universal parts. So if you guys run into this problem, make sure that you get the proper fitment for your bike. In this case, it's very borderline. I won't know 100% until I actually crank this on. So I'm going to do that right now just to double check how much is actually usable. All right, so hopefully you guys can see that up in the upper right-hand corner of the screen here. trying to keep it in focus. Those threads right there. See how it's not completely out? It's about 1 full turn, maybe 2 away from hitting that nylock there. So pretty darn close, that's pretty good. That's at least 3/4 of the nut, I believe, based on where it is right now. So I'm pretty happy with that. Obviously, I'm gonna have to take that off now, put the bar on, put the other riser on, clamp everything down, and then put the Loctite on it, and then the bar will actually be fully installed, minus the hand controls. So again, just a reminder, we have to loosen this off. And we're just loosening it off just enough so we can actually rotate and pivot the riser so that we can actually fit the handlebar in flush in the risers, and then we're going to put those top pieces on. All right, there you go, guys. Risers are on. Now, I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see this or not, but there's a gap there. That gap is supposed to be there. Because when we look at it from this angle, see, no gap whatsoever, but there's a gap on the back. This is very normal. This is actually how you're supposed to tighten your clamps on. So if your clamps look like that, you've done it correctly. You're supposed to do fronts first, tighten those down completely, and then you essentially close the gap on the back sides of these. Now, if you guys were using OEM ones, they actually have a dot, and that dot is going to represent the orientation. So the dot needs to be forward, and you tighten down those two first before you do the back ones. And sometimes this also goes for your hand control clamps as well. So pay attention to any markings on products, especially OEM ones. These are aftermarket, so we are going by flow written on them. Now that the clamps are all set up with the bar, I'm gonna take the nuts off and use blue Loctite. This is medium strength. All you have to do is just put a drop on the side of the threads, and as you guys are turning the nut on, it'll actually smear it around. That's all you gotta do. That will seal. So I'm gonna button up everything from underneath, and then I'm gonna start transferring over the controls, you know, the grip, the levers, all that fun stuff. Now this is the fun part. We have to take all the controls from the original bar, all those. We've got a new grip, gonna put on there, and the throttle has to go on here. I'm Probably going to try to do the throttle first, see how the cables fit. Turn the handlebar left and right, full lock. Make sure that I'm not stretching the cables, and provided those ones go on, I will start doing the other side. Doesn't make any sense to take everything off and try to put everything on all at the same time if you can easily just check one side at a time. Do the right side or the left, doesn't really matter. And so I'm going to do one side first. I'm going to do the throttle side. If that fits, then I'll do the left, I'll do the clutch, and hopefully both of these end up working out. So we are going to be using an 8mm. Take off the throttle clamp, that is. Just make sure that you guys are aware that these are separate pieces. And they will be coming apart, so don't be surprised. Hold it together with your hand. Right, there we go. Came off. So, like I said, keep in mind, 2 separate pieces. So now I'm going to be checking this length. Move the cables just a little bit. All right, there we go. Just squeeze those on. Make sure you guys have that little bit of play there. So again, we're just tightening the 2 bolts back up for the clamp. Nothing comes apart on this. Literally, you slide it off, slide it back on. There's nothing that's glued on. Just have that little bit of play. Make sure you guys check the play in the throttle as well. You want it to be snapping open and shut freely. So just like that, open, close, open, close. You do not want it to be sticky. If it is sticky, then you definitely have to take something apart, clean out the inside of the tube, maybe even inspect the cables, maybe lubricate them as well. So that works for the time being. So like I said, you have to turn the bars. You want to go full lock left and right and make sure that there's still lots of slack. Bar is fully to the left. Cables are still loose, so we're good. All the way to the right, everything's loose. Everything's great, actually. So, just barely getting away with this setup for the cables. If you guys notice that your throttle is not moving properly, remember? So, in and out, you want to just a little bit of play there, just a little bit. Wide open, snap shut. That's how it should be. If it's wide open and slowly releases, that is bad. Don't do that. So, all we have to do now is the left side. I'm pretty sure the cables will reach. I mean, Generally, when one side reaches, the other side generally does as well. So I'm going to take the left side off now. I'm going to take the clutch off, get that mounted up, and we should be done. Now, the one thing before you guys do that, just make sure, obviously the grip is pretty tattered, so I gotta remove that. If you guys have a kill switch button, generally bikes do, make sure you mount that in an appropriate spot. Also make sure that when you're putting the clutch lever back on, you put that in an appropriate spot as well. So if you guys want to, you can use masking tape or something else to mark along the bar where everything is supposed to be, just to make things easier. And if you have a hot start button, little lever here, make sure the hot start also reaches. You don't want anything to be taut. You don't want any cables to be tight, because then if you rip them out, it's not going to be a good day. So try to align everything so that everything is ready to go. Make sure all your clearances are good, and you guys won't have any problems. And if you do, just get longer cables and do the exact same thing. Now, supposedly the trick to removing grips is using compressed air. So I think I'm going to go over and grab that hose and put some air in here, and hopefully it'll shoot it off. Almost. My first time doing this. Somebody told me how to do it, and hopefully I'm doing it right. Okay, that wasn't very graceful, but it does work. The air forced into the end actually makes the rubber puff up, which helps remove the glue. Well, it doesn't really remove it, but it lets go of the hold that the glue has, so this trick definitely worked. I probably should have cleaned off all the dirt. All right, there we go. Old bar. All the controls here, which are pretty dirty. So keep in mind that if you guys can clean this stuff beforehand, definitely do that. All right, so I'm sure you guys are probably wondering why I'm not putting the clutch lever assembly on this right away, and that is because I'm trying not to disassemble everything just to make things a little bit easier. So you can either take the bar out of the riser, twist it, because you can actually move it around, and put these components on, or you can leave them loosey-goosey the way they are right now and put it on, right? So like this, loose, take the clamps off, loosen those off, take the bar out, and then you can actually slide the bar in through there. However, I think it's going to be a little bit easier because I simply have 2 bolts here to just take these 2 off. However, the kill switch button, a little bit tricky because this nut in here, the square nut, is actually locked in there, and this doesn't quite reach. So unless I reroute it, it is not going to work in its current state. It's about 2 inches off. So I definitely can't make that go on. Obviously it's going to go on, but I'm going to have to loosen up these clamps, take the handlebar out completely, put these pieces on, slide them on where I need them to be, check the clearance again, and then position my bar to where I want it. All right, guys. Well, that is pretty much it. As you guys can see, controls are all swapped over. I've checked everything. Full tilt left, full tilt right. Nothing binds. I've put the cables back in their slot there, so nothing gets pinched. These controls, I don't have the grip on just yet, but you guys don't need to see that. That's pretty basic. Put the grip glue on the inside and push it all the way on. And once this is on, make sure that it's flush to the end. And once that is on, then you guys can obviously tighten up these components here to wherever you would like them to be. Sit on the bike, set those up back to your desired measurements. That side, pretty much ready to go. I might lubricate some components in there. And of course, all I have to do is put the number plate back on. And this is completely done. So the next video, hopefully, will be me riding the bike to do the grand, fancy-looking reveal of the bike actually racing. Hopefully that goes to plan. We're waiting on the weather right now. Hopefully the weather cooperates, or else you guys are going to have to wait until maybe next summer to see what this actually does. Well, guys, what did you think of that one? Obviously, there's a few pieces here and there that maybe I'm a little vague on, I suppose, simply because I am not a mechanic. Anything that you guys have questions about, please ask. If I don't know the answer or if I've said something wrong, leave a comment down below. Let me know. Leave your comments, leave your questions. I know a lot of mechanics, and I am referencing my manual, by the way, so I'm not just winging this completely. Obviously, I'm referring to that, the Haynes manual, I believe it is, and that thing is helping me out quite a bit. I'm reading through that, going through all the steps, so I'm not completely blind on this one, but it's just handlebars. It's not a Harley, it's a dirt bike. Relatively straightforward. You unbolt this, you bolt it back on, you're done. So, I'm gonna obviously button this up in just a minute, and yeah, you guys will just have to wait for the grand reveal. Anyway, hopefully you guys liked this one. Hopefully it was informative, and if so, be sure to smash that like button so I know that it's working. Comments, questions down below, and of course, be sure to subscribe so you guys don't miss out on future content on the channel, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.